Welcome to our video. Today we have 3 super creepy stories about text messages that will send shivers down your spine. Imagine getting a message from a ghost or a stranger who knows too much about you. These stories are so spooky that you'll want to keep your phone close. So get comfy, maybe grab a friend, and get ready to hear some of the creepiest text message tales ever. Thank you for watching Craving Fear. We need your support to continue delivering stories and improve. If you haven't yet, like this video and subscribe for more content. I had just moved into a new town with my parents, excited to start fresh in a charming old house on the edge of town. As soon as we settled in, I began receiving strange text messages on my phone. The first message came one evening. "How was your day?" I found it odd since only a few people had my number. The next day, I got another text. "How was your run?" I just returned from my morning jog. I chuckled, thinking it must be a prank. But then, the messages kept coming. "What did you get from the grocery store?" I just bought some groceries that afternoon. At first, I found it funny and shared the messages with my parents, and we all had a good laugh. However, things soon took a dark turn. The messages started getting creepy. "Why are you ignoring me?" one text read. The tone was aggressive, and my amusement turned into unease. I couldn't reply because the number was always withheld. I started feeling watched, and every new text sent shivers down my spine. I became jumpy and nervous. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a cold dread wash over me. I couldn't focus on anything, and even the slightest noise made me jump. My parents noticed my change in behavior and grew concerned. One night, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was another message. "Why did you leave the window open?" My heart raced as I glanced at my bedroom window. It was slightly ajar. I had no memory of leaving it open. I quickly shut it. The next day, I told my parents about the message. They decided to call the police. The officer who arrived took down all the details and promised to look into it. But the messages didn't stop. If anything, they became more frequent and more menacing. "I know where you are," one read. Another said, "You can't hide from me." My fear grew. I felt eyes on me all the time, like someone was constantly watching me. I started seeing shadows move out of the corner of my eye. I heard whispers in the night, but when I checked, there was no one there. My once cozy bedroom felt like a prison. I barely slept, and when I did, I had nightmares about being chased by a faceless figure. One evening, my parents decided to go out for dinner, leaving me alone in the house. I tried to distract myself with the TV, but my phone buzzed again. "You're alone now, aren't you?" My hands trembled as I read the message. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. My breath quickened. I fumbled for a flashlight and turned it on, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I heard footsteps coming from upstairs. "Who's there?" I shouted, but there was no answer. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs. My flashlight flickered, and I could see a shadowy figure at the top of the stairs. The figure moved slowly and deliberately, and I could hear the faint breathing sound. I backed into a corner, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a pale face with hollow eyes. "Why are you ignoring me?" it whispered. I screamed and bolted for the front door. I yanked it open and ran outside into the night, not stopping until I reached a neighbor's house. The police arrived quickly, but when they searched the house, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no intruder, nothing. I was shaking, barely able to speak. I showed them the messages on my phone, but they couldn't trace the number. The next day, I decided to change my phone number. As soon as I did, the messages stopped. I started feeling safe again, but the fear lingered. I kept the windows and doors locked at all times and rarely stayed home alone. Weeks later, my parents discovered an old diary hidden in the attic. It belonged to a girl who had lived in the house many years ago. Her name was Emily. She mysteriously disappeared. The last entries in the diary talked about someone watching her, sending her messages, and threatening her. I realized that same thing had happened to me. When I was a teenager, I had a friend named Adam. Adam was always quiet and not very sociable. We got along well and would visit each other's houses to play on PlayStation together. Adam didn't have many other friends and was considered weird by most kids at school. One thing I noticed was that no matter how hot it was, Adam always wore long sleeves and most of the time a hoodie. I found it odd, but never asked him about it. One evening, we were playing a video game at my house. I looked out the window and noticed that it was a full moon. "Look, Adam, it's a full moon tonight," I said, pointing at the window. Adam started shaking and sweating. He mumbled something about needing to go to the bathroom and quickly left the room. I waited for him to come back, but he was taking a long time. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I looked at it and saw a message from Adam. It was in all capital letters. "Do not let me in the house. Whatever you do, do not let me in." Confused and a little scared, I went to knock on the bathroom door. "Adam, are you okay? Why'd you text me?" There was no answer. I opened the door and saw that the bathroom was empty. Panic set in. Where did he go? I searched the house but couldn't find him. A few minutes later, I heard banging on the front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Adam. His face was covered by his hood and his head was down. He didn't say anything but growled like an animal. I was terrified. "Adam? What's going on? Are you okay?" I shouted through the door, but he just kept making those weird sounds. He started banging on the door with his fist so hard that it looked like he would break it. Adam was trying to get in. His growls were louder now, almost feral. I could see his distorted shadow through the curtains, pacing back and forth. Eventually, the noises stopped and Adam left. I stayed up all night, too scared to sleep. The next day at school, Adam acted like nothing had happened. He tried to laugh it off and said it was just a joke, but I knew better. Something was terribly wrong, and I decided to stop being friends with him. A few weeks later, I heard rumors about Adam's family. They said his family had a dark secret. Some people claimed that his great-grandfather had been cursed by a witch. The curse turned him into a werewolf on full moon nights. The curse was passed down through generations, and Adam was the latest victim. Adam's parents had tried everything to break the curse, but had failed. They moved frequently to keep the secret safe. Adam wore long sleeves and hoodies to hide the marks and scars from his transformations. The night he was at my house, the full moon triggered the curse, and he couldn't control himself. He texted me to warn me because he didn't want to hurt me. I never saw Adam again after that night. His family moved away suddenly, and no one knew where they went. The experience left me shaken and wary of full moons. I realized that sometimes people carry burdens and secrets that are too heavy to share. Even now, whenever there's a full moon, I remember Adam and wonder where he is. I hope he found a way to break the curse and live a normal life. But deep down, I know that some curses are too strong to break. The memory of that night still haunts me, a reminder that the world is full of mysteries and dangers we can't always understand. Adam's story is a sad one. He was a good friend who tried to protect me, even when he couldn't protect himself. I learned that sometimes the scariest things aren't monsters or ghosts, but the secrets people keep hidden. And those secrets can come out when we least expect them, changing our lives forever. I've always been very close to my brother Tim. We grew up doing everything together. We played games, shared secrets, and supported each other through thick and thin. When Tim had to move to another state for his job, it was hard for both of us, but we kept in touch and spoke on the phone all the time. One night, I was sleeping peacefully when my phone buzzed. It was 3 a.m. Groggy and confused, I reached for my phone. It was a message from Tim. "I'm cold. Come get me." I blinked, trying to make sense of the message. I thought it must be a prank, so I put the phone down and rolled over to go back to sleep. But then, the phone buzzed again. "I'm cold. Come get me." This time, the message sent shivers down my spine. Something about it felt wrong. I sat up in bed, fully awake now, and tried calling Tim. The call didn't connect. Tried a few more times, but each attempt ended in silence. A cold dread began to creep over me. As I sat there in the darkness, I noticed that the room was unusually cold. It felt like all the windows were open, but they weren't. I got out of bed and checked the house, trying to find where the cold was coming from. There was nothing. The windows were all shut, and the heater was on. The cold was unbearable, and I felt like there was someone else in the house with me. The feeling was so strong that I could almost hear someone breathing nearby. Then, the phone rang. I grabbed it, hoping it was Tim, but it wasn't. It was a police officer. "Is this Tim's brother?" he asked. "Sorry to inform you that your brother had a car accident. He didn't make it." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What? When did this happen?" I stammered. "Around 2:45 a.m., the officer replied. I glanced at the clock. It was 3:10 a.m. I received text messages from Tim at 3 a.m., just 15 minutes after the accident. My mind raced, trying to understand how that was possible. Tim was gone, but he'd sent me messages after he died. I sat down, feeling a mix of shock and grief. As the reality sank in, I realized that the coldness in the house and the strange sensations weren't just my imagination. The days that followed were a blur. I attended Tim's funeral, numb with grief. I kept thinking about those messages and the chilling cold that had filled my house that night. I couldn't shake the feeling that Tim's spirit had visited me, trying to say goodbye. After the funeral, I went to the spot where Tim had the accident. It was a lonely stretch of road, dark and quiet. I stood there, feeling the wind blow past me, and whispered. In the weeks that followed, strange things continued to happen. I would often wake up feeling cold, even on warm nights. Sometimes I would hear faint whispers like Tim was trying to talk to me. I knew it sounded crazy, but I believed that Tim was still with me in some way. One night, I decided to talk to a medium, someone who could communicate with spirits. I wanted to understand why this was happening. The medium, an elderly woman with kind eyes, listened to my story and nodded. "Your brother's spirit is restless," she said. "He has unfinished business. He loved you very much and didn't get a chance to say goodbye properly." I felt a tear roll down my cheek. "What can I do to help him?" I asked. The medium smiled gently. "Talk to him. Tell him it's okay to move on. Light a candle and say a prayer for him. Let him know that you love him and that it's time for him to find peace. That night, I lit a candle and sat by the window, looking up at the stars. I spoke to Tim, telling him how much I missed him and loved him. Told him it was okay to move on and that he didn't have to stay behind for me. From that night on, I knew that Tim had found peace, and though I still missed him terribly, I felt comforted knowing that he was in a better place. Life slowly returned to normal, but I never forgot those chilling text messages. They were a reminder of the bond I shared with my brother, a bond that even death couldn't break. Now, whenever I look up at the stars, I think of Tim and smile, knowing that he's watching over me. Thank you for watching. If you have interesting stories, send them in an email at the address listed in the video description, and I'll make it into a video. See you next time.